I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council. It's Monday, March 14th, 2022. Please call the roll.
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Hersey?
Here.
Ms. Colasetti?
Here.
Ms. Bishop?
Here.
Ms. Wilkin?
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here. Next item is approval of minutes from the February 28th meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is that Grace?
Yes.
Moved by Chandra, seconded by Grace. Are there any substantial corrections? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
That motion passes. Next item is additions to the agenda. We don't have any tonight.
I believe there is an addition to the agenda, actually.
Oh, there is?
Grace?
Go ahead.
Yes, I would like to move to add the presentation on food waste and plastic bag tax by students of Dr. Eric Green at the UIUC IC program, I believe. I was trying to think about where to put it. I don't know if it makes sense between the public inputs or just before or after. I'm open to a suggestion on where in particular.
A second.
Given that, why don't we go ahead and do that first for a 10-minute presentation? And then we'll keep public input together.
That is fine. I can move to do it before public input.
Will the
I'll
clerk-
second.
All right, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Colasetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Okay, who did I forget?
That motion passes.
If I could say point of order, I sent an email and mayor for some people who would need to be promoted for that presentation.
When was this, I did not see an email on this. When did this get sent?
Just very recently, just before this meeting.
We really need to have a little bit more heads up in the future. So promoting to panelists would be Tyler Swanson, Jamie Abbott, Christina Garcia, Jenna Schaefer.
What you think of this bullshit?
You're muted.
Ashley Toposlu, Alexa Smith, Christopher Eng, Maya Case, and John Hopkins. Did you provide that to Wadrago, to Borima?
Yes. I'm not sure if we have just Dr. Green there, maybe with students in person, and we don't need to let them all in. That would be great as well.
That is correct.
Okay, so none of them need to be promoted as panelists. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so go ahead, Dr. Green. You'll have 10 minutes.
All right, I am going to share my students' presentation and they will take over. Give me 1 second here.
Hello to the City Council members. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak tonight. My name is Alexa Smith, and I'm a part of the Environmental Leadership Program at the University of Illinois, along with my classmates here. For the past several weeks, we've been researching food waste and food insecurity in the Urbana community, and we're excited to share with you the research and proposals that we have for you. So as a bit of backstory, each of us has our own unique connections to this issue, but I wanted to share something personally that draws this issue close to my heart. So my freshman year, I joined an organization called Project for Less, which was the first student group that I participated in after visiting their booth on Quad Day. I remember walking up to their stand where they revealed to me that while Champaign County is one of the most food insecure counties in the state, there's simultaneously 500,000 pounds of food waste stemming from our university dining halls each year. And learning that these two issues exist simultaneously made me really upset and perplexed. So I've taken a lot of classes, including natural resource economics, environmental policy, and sustainability analysis. And I've also participated in several student groups and campus units aimed at addressing these issues. But unfortunately, 4 years later, as an exiting senior, I'm afraid to say that despite all of this hard work in both campus and the community, this issue still very much exists. So that's why we are aiming to kind of address these issues through some different ordinances. And our mission is to prevent the loss of resource-intensive valuable food from entering the landfill, reduce landfill tipping fees, and provide nutritious foods to food insecure individuals in the community. We know that the Urbana City Council has discussed the issue of food waste pretty extensively, so we won't belabor these points, but the overall rate of food insecurity is projected to increase 3% in the coming years, and about 17% of all garbage sent to landfills in Illinois is in fact food waste. So in order to address these issues, we propose the council to develop a food waste diversion regulation in conjunction with tax incentives, specifically focusing on grocery stores and limiting pre-consumer food waste from these sources in the community. Based on several ordinances of different cities and states, we recommend that it is mandated for designated grocery stores producing more than 1.5 tons of food waste every week to either donate or compost these scraps based on whether they're edible or non-edible. And the timeline for this is projected to be at least 9 months, which is similar to the food scrap proposal that has already been discussed. Some of the challenges that we wanted to bring up that we've looked into include enforcement, quantifying this waste on the end of grocery stores, and then transportation and logistics for the food waste.
Now, there's already some similar practices in place in other towns and cities across the United States. Boulder, Colorado, for example, is a town similar in size to Urbana and is also a college town. They have a zero tolerance policy on their food waste program. So it encompasses all residential, commercial, and businesses versus our proposal that only focuses on targeting the largest producers of food waste. Now, we're hoping to modify the New York and Massachusetts bills to focus on how if you make over a certain amount of food waste per year, you abate by that amount and donate and divert it. Now, there's already some supporting legislation in place to help make these things easier. We have the Illinois House Bill 3093. This is a state plan to cut food waste by 50% by 2030. So Urbana could get ahead of the curve there. Along with the Good Samaritan Food Donor Act, it helps food donors be in any event that in case there's certain protections available to them if they donate food. Along with the concrete bin construction project currently in place at the Landscape Recycling Center in Urbana that is hoping to take in food scrap. Now, cost-benefit analysis. We have some guesstimations and estimations on the cost to implement this program, with a cost around $40,000 to get things really started and going on the producer side. But we also calculated that there is a revenue possibly from the LRC, with each tipping coming in from producers, along with some savings for the city and waste haulers. All right. Thank you for listening to us today. We hope you can take a look at our draft proposal later on.
And we have one more group. Let's share a slightly different presentation here. Trying to keep it under 10 minutes here.
Hello, and thank you for listening to our presentation today. Just earlier today, I was walking back to my dorm and I noticed 3 different plastic bags stuck in the trees and in the bushes. Along with plastic bags being a significant contributor to municipal litter, they also clog storm drains and they clog waterways. Particular to the Champaign-Urbana region, they also reduce agricultural productivity. This issue is aggravated by the prevalence of plastic bags. Statistics show that there are 100 billion plastic bags used annually in the United States. And the figure on the screen shows that only 15% of these are recycled, while 68% of these are sent to landfill. In order to address these issues, our group of University of Illinois students proposes a tax on disposable bags.
Now, you may be wondering why we're proposing a tax instead of a ban. After researching, we realized that bans are ineffective, as this encourages the retail stores to offer either thicker plastic bags or even paper bags. This reverses the initial impacts of the ban being implemented in the first place. An additional alternative that may be considered is mandatory recycling programs. And although these programs can be low cost, this places the burden of recycling on the consumer directly and does not guarantee that bags will be recycled, which is why we propose a bag tax instead. A fun fact is that exactly 10 years ago today, the Champaign City Council voted in favor of a bag fee on single-use plastic bags, yet there has been no progress made on that policy since today, which demonstrates the overall importance of this issue and how Urbana could take the lead on a bag tax.
As you'll see on the fact sheet on our screen, we recommend instituting an 11-cent per bag tax based on an analysis from policy researchers at Brown University. This 11 cents accounts for the range of negative societal impacts caused by disposable bags that include littering, landfilling, damage to recycling processes, and the greenhouse gas emissions that are produced by bag manufacturing. In order to avoid imposing a financial burden on low-income residents, we recommend exempting SNAP and WIC recipients from paying this tax. Now, should this tax be implemented, we do foresee 2 scenarios resulting from this implementation. Scenario 1 being a low response, high revenue scenario, and scenario 2 being high response and low revenue. Under a low response, high revenue scenario, we foresee a roughly 28% decrease in plastic bag consumption in Urbana and predict from that a tax revenue stream for the city of $680,000 per year. Under a high response, low revenue scenario, we foresee a 90% decrease in plastic bag consumption and therefore predict a tax revenue stream of $94,000 per year.
Overall, a bag tax would provide the city with a new stream of revenue to fund green projects, such as providing residents with reusable bags. And then additionally, the evidence that we're going to go over proves that bag taxes decrease plastic bag use and littering rates, which would result in a cleaner cityscape.
So there are many examples of plastic bag taxes being effective. One of the first and most successful plastic bag taxes was implemented in Ireland back in 2002 for 15 euro cents per bag. This tax decreased plastic bag use by 90%. The amount of litter from plastic bags decreased from 5% of all litter to 0.22% of all litter. And this tax also garnered strong support from the public as a result of the noticeable decrease in plastic bag litter. In Illinois, the city of Edwardsville enacted a 10-cent fee on paper and plastic bags in July 2021. This tax decreased disposable bag use by 87.5% in the 4 months following. Chicago originally enacted a plastic bag ban in 2015, but repealed it in 2016 after finding it to actually waste more plastic. They changed the policy to a 7-cent bag tax in 2017. 1 year after implementation of the tax, the likelihood of using a disposable bag decreased by nearly 28%. Given the success of these programs, we know a bag tax in Urbana would be successful in reducing disposable bag use as well. Thank you for your time, and we request that the city look into the feasibility of implementing this tax.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to public input. And tonight, we're prioritizing with council approval the first 30 minutes of public input specifically to receive public comment regarding the use of American Rescue Plan Act ARPA funds. We plan to take input at council or committee meetings on the following dates. In addition to tonight, which is March 14th, we'll be taking input on March 21st, 28th, and April 4th. There will also be a listening session in City Council chambers on Tuesday, April 5th from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. This is in person. And then finally, we encourage the community to provide your opinions via the survey at ccrpc.org/urbana-ARPA. And all this information is available now on our website and social media. So to get us started here, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to prioritize first 30 minutes of public input tonight for comments related to ARPA funds. And for the public who are listening, if you want to speak to the ARPA funds as well as make comments on other topics, you will be able to speak on the other topics. But we'd like to prioritize ARPA comments first so that we can get them all in a concise manner. So is there a motion?
I will move that we prioritize the ARPA discussion for the first 30 minutes of public input.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion? Grace.
Question, does that mean we're still doing up to an hour total? Like, is this an additional 30 minutes for ARPA or?
At this point, there's a total of 1 hour for public input unless the council extends. So we'll see how it goes. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey, Ms. Hersey,
Yeah. Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
Okay,
Who did I
thank you.
forget?
Okay, Barima, could you put that slide up to get us started? Okay, great. So again, we do have the survey live and it can be found at the address on the screen here. And tonight, just some background information to remind the public, the council has identified the 5 broad areas or priorities. And the question to you tonight and for what we're seeking information on is which ones do you think are the most important or what we should prioritize for ARPA funding. Those include sustainable infrastructure, human rights and social services, public health and safety, adequate and affordable housing, economic recovery and development. Other questions you may choose to address are what are the outcomes you would like to see from use of the ARPA funds? And do you have any specific ideas for funding projects or programs related to the priority areas? And of course, we welcome comments, anything you want to say related to the ARPA allocation. So if you are interested in commenting on ARPA allocations, please raise your hand and we'll call on you first. Reverend Dr. Evelyn Underwood, and you'll have 4 minutes, please. Is Dr. Underwood unmuted?
It looks like she's still muted.
I'm trying to unmute myself. Is it unmuted yet?
Yes, you're unmuted.
I know it, but you know what? They're going through all kinds. It shouldn't take 5 or 6 times to unmute me.
Well, we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Okay, I'm glad because I want to make sure I get to use my time. First of all, I was saying that it's so unfortunate that the public gets so little time. You know, we couldn't say anything at the other when the city council was meeting. I understand that. You know, they've done theirs, but we the people, don't forget, we the people. It's all about the citizens. And we get so little time to deal with this situation. I hope some people are putting in something because it's not like what happened. I'm not saying we need to be champagne, but we need to get something in for these people who are going through the trauma. Yeah, I heard Miss Karen Don't get me wrong now with the other, but let me go on so I can see. What I am concerned about tonight is match the meal. I've talked about this before, and I called it the SWIFT program at Parkland. And I did get back because y'all met with them and they said they didn't need nothing. But the 52, there was 52 people in the program in 2020. Now I understand with information that I've seen that it's the lowest enrollment in the 16 other counties, and second in the lowest attendance. Something needs to be done. And so I'm just saying we need to increase the stipend and increase the enrollment. I know what y'all said before, and I don't have time to talk about it, but I do have time to say that we know that people need help. We just finished with Channel 3, praying for peace, and we do want peace. We got to reduce the violence, victory over violence. Yes, but we got to do something for the people. Give them a leg up. Now you can help, and which is right. I want to see you help the refugees and all that. But you don't want to give, I'm just going to say that, black and brown. And right now I'm talking about the black people who this country was built upon. I'm not angry, but I'm being compassionate and passionate, if you will. We need to do something for these people. We got to do something for these families. We are the faith community. We've been dealing what we can do, but we got to have action. And I can give you what I said on radio the other day. We got to have action. Champaign gave $3 million, not been justifying it ever since on Channel 3 News and the newspaper. Why you got to justify when you got all those other? You had $25 million. And you gave $3 little million to these people and got somebody to speak, to meet it out like crumbs. I don't want Urbana to do that. I don't want Urbana to do that. We need to help these families so they can help their children. Now, I know if they got to have a job, $50,000 or more for this SWIFT program. And why can't you match? You got millions now. You said one time, it's not recurring funds. Why we know that. So help these people. Help these people. Give them a leg up. Oh, I'm gonna help the people. That's the war is going on in that time, Ukraine, and I want to help the other people. But I'm saying we got to help the people here. Now I'm not gonna answer that phone. They can call me back later. I want to get my minutes in, please. I don't know how to tell. I'm old now. I can't even talk anymore. But the people get what I'm saying from my heart. We got to help these people and help these families. Otherwise, I don't know what's going to happen. We're not going back to Africa. We're going to stay right here in America. This is our country too.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, next up is Brandy McCoy, and this is to comment on ARPA allocations. Go ahead, Brandy.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. For ARPA allocations, I'm off script, so I might bounce around a little bit, but I did see the presentation for a wellness center at a recent meeting, and I do like the idea of a wellness center. I think it could be a great benefit to the city of Urbana and its residents, but I do agree with another commenter. I can't remember who it was, but you know, she pointed out that a wellness center would take time to build, and in the meantime, you know, we're not using these funds for people who are hurting as a result of COVID, right? And since Chris Evans the other day said, everyone he's talked to has said jobs, 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 right? We need to get people jobs. So I would also like to voice support for Matching the Mill for the SWIFT program. I know, Mayor, you've said that it's a one-time thing, and that seems to imply that it wouldn't be feasible to match the mill with the ARPA funds. But what if you put $1 million, you know, fund? I don't know how the back end finances work. But so there's $1 million fund for a one-time grant. And once those funds are gone, they're gone. But in the meantime, we can increase the stipend to increase enrollment. So the people who run SWIFT said, we don't need money, we need enrollment. Well, I would theorize that people aren't enrolling maybe as one reason because they can't afford to, because we all have bills to pay. It was pointed out also in a recent meeting that $50,000 can be maybe hard to live on in our community, right? So, folks got bills to pay, and we can't just drop work to jump into a program to get better work, right? So if we had this fund set up with $1 million and we gave Urbana residents who are participating in the SWIFT program $50,000 a year, that'd be 20 residents to go through the program. If we gave them 25, that'd be 40. If we gave them $10,000 a year, broken up into 12 months, right, monthly stipend, that would be 100 people who could go through this program in the city of Urbana. And maybe it takes years, right, for us to go through all of the funds, but we're progressively helping the community versus spending years building a wellness center that in the end is probably going to have a lot of benefit, right? But we're leaving people out in the meantime. So I just really want to advocate for matching the mill. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it could be a really beautiful thing that the city of Urbana could do for its residents. It would encourage, I feel like it would encourage people to live in Urbana. It looks good and it feels good and it feels right. So, there's, I would love to see and be able to be proud of my community in that way, really, really advocating for people and giving people what they need so that we can address this crime problem that we've been discussing, right? So that's what I have to say about the ARPA funds. Thank you so much. Y'all have a good night.
Thank you. Next speaker is Eddie Pratt Jr.
Give me 1 second. My line is tied up. Okay, can you hear me clearly?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Great. Hi, my name is Eddie Pratt Jr. I am a resident of Champaign. I come here tonight to speak about the ARP fund allocation. As other speakers have already alluded to a little bit, the campaign Match the Mill, which I am the de facto, I guess, campaign lead of a coalition of people and organizations stretching the county now and outside of CU borders. We want to see equity in our communities. Surely this is what a lot of these different efforts are about. And yes, you gotta, at the end of the day, you gotta be able to pay your bills, and it's not really rocket science, and I've said it before, but when all of your basic needs are covered, for the most part, there's not really much violence on your mind after that. But that also shores up other gaps, like having the ability to afford childcare or having the ability to raise your children in a way that keeps them from letting the streets raise them. Currently, we have people that are making just due on $20,000-$25,000 a year. It is really hard, almost impossible to keep your family together with that type of money. We know that, but this is something that has been happening in the Black community for an extremely long time. But that is not all that you could do with this amount of money. There is an issue of infrastructural racism as far as the Ellis Drive sewer situation. I'm sure you are aware of it, as advocates have been tirelessly putting in so much work over all of these years, and this has always been pushed back. It is shameful that this same pattern exists in this community, a pattern that we've seen across countries in Black neighborhoods, where Black neighborhoods are constantly, woefully, willfully neglected to the detriment of the Black residents themselves, who are also a part of that same community. So you do have some opportunities to right some wrongs and do some things that are a little forward thinking, I guess. At the end of the day, the people that are impacted by gun violence are not those who are $70,000, $80,000 earners, house paid for and bought and all of that. It's not. That common denominator is troublesome. And I hope that in good faith that we discontinue the level of cynicism that has been apparent around this issue. Because this is more than about me or you or any one of us. It's about all of us here together. And so in solidarity, I hope that these things are things that you consider. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you. Next up is Fiona Monroe.
Good evening, City Council. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Fabulous. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. I would like to strongly encourage the City Council with this ARPA funding to correct the infrastructural issues within the Dr. Ellis subdivision. As the previous commenter was mentioning, this is an issue that folks have been speaking out in the community about for up to 10 years now. And it seems ridiculous that no action has been taken to decrease the effects on homeowners of a mistake that was made by the original contractors who were developing that area. I think, you know, the spirit of the funding is to redevelop and rebuild our communities, and this is an issue in our community that should have been addressed a long time ago, which needs addressing now. So I would just like to mention that. I also am also in solidarity with the previous commenter and several others in terms of the Match the Mill campaign and the SWIFT program and increasing their funding so as to increase enrollment. The statistics seem to suggest that this is underutilized unusually of similar programs, and that seems to be a source of concern. It's a very important program and a very powerful one for folks that need that access to learning. And so I think that would be a very useful thing to be funding for this community. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to specifically address the ARPA allocations tonight? Joan?
Oh, sorry. Diane, I just want to let you know that there was an email that was sent that was asked specifically to be read into the ARPA discussion.
Okay, we'll do that after we hear from these folks. Joan Gray?
Hi, hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, thanks for letting me speak today. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. I would just like to piggyback off of some of the other commenters have said and just say that the infrastructure rebuild around the sewers, I understand that it's a very expensive project, and that's the sort of reason why action on it would be delayed. But especially with all of these additional funds, right now seems like a really great opportunity to take care of a long-standing problem because we do have all of these extra funds to invest into our infrastructure and making sure that some of our less Some of the neighborhoods that were less well developed can be brought up to par. And with these extra funds, if not now, then when? It's just going to continue being kicked down the can. The can is going to be continued to kick down the line if we continue to allow it to be so. So I think now would be a great time. Besides that, investing in our people, besides the moral and good reasons, pragmatically, helping people earn more will come back and invest into the town, right? If someone has the ability to earn more money, they'll be able to spend more, invest, and potentially buy houses, right? So it can end up coming back into the community. So it is a reinvestiture. And besides just the common easy good, there's some other economic good on the back end. So it should really be considered. Thank you for allowing me to speak, and I hope you all have a good evening.
Thank you. Next up is Julie Watkins.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Julie Watkins. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I believe what people have said already is a good thing. I think that we really need to put support into jobs, and that is a good use for COVID response funds because there has been much economic problem, and it does contribute to a lot of the violence problems that people really need the jobs that will help them be able to stay in a good place. It will help a great deal. And we also should be rectifying the infrastructure problems for the minority group in minority community in Dr. Ellis subdivision. And I want to be supporting that as well. So I'm really in favor of really focusing the ARPA funds into stuff that the COVID has especially impacted very vulnerable people. So we should be working at what those people are specifically asking for within structures that are already there. I mean, Parkland's already there, so we can help these people get trained and get better jobs. And that's what I wanted to say. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker will be Patrick. Could you state your name for the record, Patrick?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Patrick Thompson. And so I want to echo what everybody else has commented regarding the ARPA funds being used in the African American community for economic development, training, jobs, as well as the city hiring a diversity compliance officer for long-term, short and long-term development. As we all know, that the problems that we've been seeing in the African American community have been existing for years. We can go back to, slavery, Jim Crow laws, education. We can look at the drugs that were, flooded our communities, the mass incarceration. We can look in currently the gun violence. And any and everyone in an African American community knows that economic development has created the issues in the community. And the societal impact that we've had in our community has devastated the community. And if we don't, the leaders, municipalities, city officials make this a priority, then we're going to continue seeing what we're seeing in our community. Now, when it comes to enforcement, it comes to the criminal justice system, then we are always finding ways to find money to combat that. And you cannot, and there's no way you're going to be able to, law enforcement and mass incarceration to get out of the problem that has been going on for years. So I just, this is something I think it should be, it should be discussed. There should be a plan development. There should be some hiring. And these are things we, and the community as taxpayers should be entitled to. And we should not have to continue to see the same type of status quo that we're seeing now. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to address the council on the ARPA funding allocations? Okay, are there any other general comments for public input? Please raise your hand.
So,
Mary Alice, go ahead.
Diane, may I read this letter?
Yes. Please.
Okay, this is on ARPA. It's about the ARPA survey. So it says, Dear Mayor Marlin, City Council members and City Clerk, for the ARPA survey, we believe that it is crucial that in addition to check boxes, we ask for the closest intersection for the Urbana respondent's place of residence. It will help the city to have more accurate information for future analysis. Residents from different wards might have different needs. It was done during the Imagine Urbana survey, and mistakes can easily be made using the check boxes feature alone, especially on a smartphone, from Kenita Fay.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address the Urbana City Council? Please raise your hand. Okay. I'm not seeing anyone. I want to thank everyone for your comments. Again, we'll be repeating this the next 3 meetings, plus we'll have the in-person meeting on April 5th, and the survey is now live. Okay, we'll move on to council input and communications. Any council members want to say something? Grace.
Thank you. I want to say thank you for the public and appreciate your input here and on the survey as well and the town hall. And also feeling free to reach out any other time. I want to apologize with a little bit of confusion and awkwardness with the presentation tonight. There was some miscommunication on who needed into the Zoom room, versus who was just presenting and all in one place. I definitely see that it's not the smoothest, and I think it could have been avoided. This class was one that reached out to a few council members earlier in the start of the semester. Myself, a few other council members, even the mayor went and talked to this class, I believe. Maybe this was a different one. I might be confusing it with another one. But this class I've talked to and some staff, and they've come to the Sustainability Advisory Commission meeting. And they did reach out for a presentation earlier, and I think we're told no. So I think that could have been avoided if we could have allowed them a 10-minute presentation in the first place. Thank you.
I'll just clarify that. They They did reach out a second time. I met with Scott Test today, and I wanted to get some further information and background from him, and then I was going to reach out to Dr. Green. So in the future, if you want to schedule a presentation, you really need to go through the clerk's office to do that, because none of us had an indication that this presentation was going to be on the agenda. So, but yes, I did meet with Scott Test today and was going to reach out back to Dr. Green. James.
Class is over, so this was the last chance.
Yeah, I just had a follow up with Kenita Fay, who wrote the letter that Mary Alice read earlier. She did notice that the street crossing is on the third page of the survey, so it is in there. But she also raised the concern that getting that information is important and suggested that it be moved up. I did share some conversation with her and said it was unlikely that we would change the survey once it was already open, because that's not a really good practice. But that is the feedback, that it's really important to get some geolocation information associated with some of these requests to see if they're related to particular awards.
Okay. Mary Alice.
So I just wanted the community to know that Kevin Garcia and Kat Trotter have been doing some neighborhood meetings regarding the R7 rezoning. And so the meeting that was originally scheduled for this week has been rescheduled. So it will not be taking place on the 16th as originally announced. It'll be taking place on Tuesday, March 29th at 7 p.m. And it will be over Zoom instead of Ring Central. So people who are interested in having input in terms of what should happen with the R7 zoning, which is traditional university housing. So it's the old university certified housing, the fraternities and sororities, and the boarding houses. They're primarily located east and west of Lincoln, probably about two streets east of Lincoln. That's where the vast majority of those properties are currently zoned.
Yeah.
I was going to share some of what Mary Alice just shared, and also just thank, I heard back directly from Kat, but Kat and Kevin for being flexible in response to community feedback that this is U of I spring break. And so many of the residents who live in that part of our city would be out of town and unable to attend, and also being receptive to hearing that using a platform other than Zoom that people were not familiar with was a barrier for folks. So I really appreciate that level of attention and flexibility in response to community input rather. I also did want to kind of follow up. I do appreciate Dr. Green being persistent. I understand that it is inconvenient when things are added last minute, but that's why we have the option to add additions to the agenda. And as Grace tried to mention, this was the end of the class. And so this is a class that had been in contact with many of us throughout their course. And I think that it is important that we remember that students are part of our constituents and part of our community, and that they have a chance to speak as well.
Chris.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just want to thank everybody that did public input tonight, but I just want to kind of flag the fact that, you know, those of us that have been in this town for over 40 years have watched economic development happen in West Champaign. We've watched economic development happen in the sports center of the University of Illinois. We've watched economic development happen in the residential halls of the University of Illinois. We've watched Green Street develop all those high rises. We've watched downtown Champaign develop an entertainment and liquor district with a bunch of hotels. We've watched Stone Creek and East Champaign, Urbana get developed. So, you know, here we have this unique opportunity, once in a lifetime. We'll never get it again. This ARPA money needs to be finally dedicated to, a group, as Reverend Underwood said, people need help. And so I just hope that we can do that as we go forward. Thank you.
Any other council comments?
Hello.
Grace has
Hi. Your hand blends into the trees behind you, so sometimes you don't see it. Go ahead, Sharice.
A couple of things that I wanted to say was this. I am in solidarity regarding the issues and trying to actually been doing some research regarding the sewer issues with the Ellis Drive subdivision and how not just how this was laid, but also how the sewer stuff was laid, but also the development itself, because this happened a long time ago. And finding various like lack of evidence is evidence of how something was stuff was neglected and ignored. So I'm still looking into that. The other thing I wanted to say was that and I've been conferring and talking to an engineer about that. The other thing I wanted to say was I really appreciated the presentation that was given. I lived in Los Angeles County when they did their bag thing, and I would maybe even suggest that, but because it happened very quickly, and I came home with a lot of reusable bags. When I moved back, I've got like all kinds of canvas bags because you would have to, if you wanted a bag, if you forgot a bag, I was going to suggest that they think of paper bags, not just plastic bags, but paper bags be sold. If you just had to have a plastic bag, you had to pay for that as well. So, you can come in with your own bags. That was something that I thought that would be maybe helpful to this particular group. And that took off. It seemed to take off like wildfire. There wasn't a store that I would go into to get groceries where people didn't bring in their own canvas bags or reusable heavy, the heavier, I don't know what kind of material it is, but the Trader Joe's bags, or they bags, or they bring in some bag that like from Ralph's that would be a canvas bag as well. And also different bags to hold cold or hot substances. That is something that I think that they could add to their repertoire as far as giving suggestions, not just taxing people that use plastic bags, but take plastic bags off the table altogether and say paper bags. And that may be help. I think Urbana could actually do that. I think we could probably work that. So as far as adding to that information, that might be something consider if we decide to move forward with that type of plan at all.
Okay, thank you. Any other council comments? All right. Just to follow up, that was an excellent presentation tonight. We have always supported students speaking to the council, and we try to accommodate them. And as I said, I was getting background information today, and then intended to reach out to Dr. Green. I was not aware that this was the last night the last week that their class was meeting. But we strongly support and encourage participation from all members of the community, including students. And in fact, I'm scheduled to talk with several classes yet this semester. So just to make clear, we do welcome input. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. There is none. We'll go on to reports of standing committees from Committee Chair Grace Wilken.
Thank you. It's been a while, so let me know if I don't have it right. But on behalf of Committee of the Whole, I'd like to move, consent agenda items, ordinance number 2022-03-010, ordinance amending Schedule H of Section 23-93 of the Urbana Local Liquor Code Traffic Code, requiring stop signs at a certain intersection, Oglethorpe Avenue at Rainbow View, Montgomery Street at Rainbow View, Michigan Avenue at Oglethorpe Avenue, Michigan Avenue at Abercorn Street, and Michigan Avenue at Montgomery Street. And item B, resolution number 2022-03-026R, resolution authorizing the acceptance of a DCEO grant, Nevada Street Lighting Project.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Jaya. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes.
And then for the regular agenda, I would move for approval, resolution number 2022-03-024R, resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in connection with private activity bonds issues, single-family mortgage revenue bonds and related matters, private bond cap allocation assist programs, series 2022.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have Sheila Dodd on the call. Is there anyone else we need to admit for this discussion, Sheila? Okay.
Sorry, Diane. I was looking to see if the assist representative was on the call, but I don't see him. So.
Okay. All right. Any discussion? Well, someone has something to say. Grace?
Thank you. Yeah, I usually do.
No, I was referring to the dog actually, but go ahead, Grace.
I see. I just want to also apologize for misunderstanding this last week. I was not understanding the target area. I thought they were talking about that was their like target income level was 100 grand and up versus 80 grand and below. We've discussed that before. I definitely still have concerns about the income range now that I understand that that's the maximum. I think that makes sense, but still have some concerns about people at lower income who have the serious barriers of approval and down payment and things that this doesn't address as much. And I'm curious, still, I don't know if we got the map on the target areas or if we know more about what the target areas are.
Thanks for asking that, Grace. I did reach out to the representative from Assist and asked for a map, and he provided the census tracts that it's targeted towards. And the majority of those are kind of north of University Avenue and west of Lincoln. There's one kind of down by the Philo Road district. But he didn't have an actual map that he could share with us at this time.
Any other question? JS, go ahead.
Yeah, I was hoping, Sheila, you could speak a little bit more to, what exactly does this investment, so we're giving it to the ASSIST program, correct? And then can you explain a little bit more how this process works, right? This is a considerable amount of money that we're investing to help provide a tax credit. And I feel like there's a little bit of a gap.
Well, how those pieces. We're not providing money. We're providing the opportunity for them to purchase private activity bonds to implement this program. So it's not city money. It's just an opportunity that each year the state of Illinois gives communities to target priorities. And so the initial memo that was submitted last week kind of did a balance of the two needs that staff sees in the community, which is down payment assistance as well as affordable housing development. So I just got a long history of doing affordable housing development. Assist has a long history of doing these tax credits, but it's not cash from the city. It's not cash from the state. It's a private activity bonds that they go through a bonding agency to get.
Sorry, I think maybe I used the incorrect terminology there, but I mean in terms of the different ways we could allocate these bonds, right? Because there were a number of different categories you listed, including directing some funding towards nonprofit organizations, the housing assistance, et cetera. But this is not a down payment assistance program that we're talking about with Assist.
No, it's an actual tax credit. So each year that the person lives in the home, they get an actual $2,000 credit off of their federal income tax. And that's for the life of them living in the home.
Right, I understand that. So my question is, how does the bond relate to the credit, right? So it's a federal tax credit. So is the bond what's funding that tax credit? Is that how that's working?
I believe so. Let me check again to see if David's available. Yeah, I don't see him. So I believe so. And I did ask both the agencies that put in a request for the funding or the opportunity to do the bonding. And they said due to the technical side of how this works and the expense of the bonds, that it isn't something that makes much sense unless you have a large development assistance you're requesting for. Usually it's over $10 million from what they have seen. So it's not something like that a Habitat for Humanity could reach out and apply for to use for this program. It's not on that small of a scale. It's a very large scale project that the expense would outweigh what they would receive.
I'm sorry, just to clarify, so that is coming from the people who are already receiving the funding, or that's coming from the state who's, clarifying how this money can be allocated?
The state, the experts in the field.
That's helpful. I would like clarification on exactly how this process works, right? Like, how it is that this is resulting in that tax credit. Just because, again, looking at even the 3 projects that were listed for us, this particular piece, the Assist program, I still don't know that I see, we got into this discussion last week about what is low income in Urbana-Champaign. And I appreciate you've provided that follow-up information of, that HUD definition, which is very different than the census information about median income. But I think that clarifying exactly what is that process for the bond going to Assist, and then how does that relate to the tax credit would be helpful to me.
So the way that I understand it, and if I off on your question, is that when somebody goes to a lender and gets a loan, at the time of that loan closing, if they meet that criteria, the lenders work with the Assist program, and they actually, the individual gets a actual certificate that they can file then with their taxes. They can also, outside of Assist, they can get Assist, but they can also get down payment monies as well. So it's nice that these programs can build on top of each other. So the management of the Assist is done through the actual lenders. When they see people that can qualify, they put them through. Did I answer your question?
Kind of. It's, again, I'd be curious about what is, what is there a percentage that Assist then gets versus the lenders? How is that allocation actually distributed, right? Of for that tax credit.
Yeah, I'm not in the weeds at that level. I can ask David Roush to come back and speak on this. Let me keep checking my attendees to see if he's in there, the meeting, but I'm not in the weeds at that level.
Okay, I do have another question, but I'll let other folks go.
Chandra.
Hi, Sheila, I know you mentioned that you reach out to the lenders. I'm trying to find it. Local lenders through direct mail seminars and media advertising. What percentage of local lenders do you know sort of, I guess, offer this information to loan applicants or people looking to buy their first homes? Because I assume that it's an optional conversation for them to have, correct?
Right. It is an optional conversation. make sure I'm muted. Yeah, I am. It's my dog that keeps yapping, so that's why I keep turning my mute off and on. Anyway, yes, it is through our local lenders, and we have a community reinvestment group of local lenders that meet monthly, and these kind of programs are talked about at that meeting. And many of them, I mean, I don't have a percentage, but many of them promote this because it is a benefit to their borrower that they have access to these kind of programs. And so they work with them to do the application process and to get the certification. But to give you an actual 50% or 80%, I can't give you an honest answer.
Okay. And I know we sort of written off the EIEDA project or CAP request, but I had a question about that. So it says the city may be able to access these funds for affordable housing. The use of the word may, do they have a choice if, Urbana decides to, do the bond cap for the EIEDA? If money is given from Urbana, is it a requirement for them to do projects in the city limits?
I'm going to ask that Andrew Nesselhut from IHDA be promoted to a panelist because he can answer the development questions. Yeah, it looks like he's on.
Good evening here.
Good evening.
So I can actually probably even answer some of the questions on the Illinois Assist too, but I don't want to speak too much for it. So if you guys want to fire away, I'd be more than happy to help here. In terms of Chandra, your question, I don't know in terms of the pledges that another organization would make, but I think the conversations that we've had with Sheila in terms of the Illinois Housing Development Authority and what we would use the cap for is we cannot guarantee that it would go to the city of Urbana on a development perspective, because we still have to follow guidelines. And what I mean by that is projects have to come in, they have to be underwritten, they have to follow our qualified action plan. So I think what we've done with other municipalities in the past is we've almost looked at it as from a little bit of a look back percentage, right? So we've said over the course of the last 3 years, these are some of the developments we've done in your area. And that's why we're kind of having some of these conversations around cap. We can't get into a situation where we would guarantee that the cap would be used on a multifamily project for the city of Urbana, in this instance.
So what's the likelihood, I mean, has there ever been a time where the bond cap request has been fulfilled by Urbana and a project not been done here?
So, it's not necessarily in terms of the likelihood, not you guys, but the city, a developer would have to have a project in the city of Urbana that would have to move forward. Essentially, they would then put in a request to the Illinois Housing Development Authority in terms of, hey, we have a project. This is like a pro forma. This is a common application. We have all of our standards that we would go through. And then essentially we would go through our own approval process. Is it feasible? Are there concerns with the market area? And we would run through our programs and procedures in terms of actually getting that program off the ground. So again, it's not that we could specifically promote a developer to do something in your city. It really has to come from an outside party to us, and then we look at it from a feasibility perspective.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Jaya?
Oh, I've got another question about this program. So we saw the different income amounts and the caps for purchasing properties. Is there a way of getting some information of who is the target audience? I understand that is the cap, the highest that it can go. And we saw the loan amounts for the properties that it has applied to most recently. But I think I was assuming that this was designed to benefit low income families, but I'm not sure that that's accurate. So I would appreciate clarification.
Sure. So again, for our projects, it's a little different in terms of the broad scope that we go down. So we generically have a single family program and a multifamily program. When you're looking at a multifamily side, back to Chandra's question, we had a little bit in terms of a specific project. When we're dealing with those projects, generally speaking, they are below 80% AMI. They could be below 50% AMI. It really, again, it depends on the target borrowers that developer is bringing for that project. Mm-hmm. On the single family side, it's a little bit more broad. So we have requirements that it can go up to 120% AMI, And essentially what it boils down to is if those borrowers apply for our products in terms of getting a loan, right? So if we only have, for an example, 10 borrowers in the state of, or in the city of Urbana, and they're all at below 50% AMI, that's the demographic we end up with. If we have 10 borrowers that are 120% AMI, that's the demographic we end up with. Again, we work with originating banks and lenders that are essentially pushing our products, so to speak. And we don't really have any dictation in terms of what borrowers go into those banks that need to purchase a home. It's really kind of the afterthought of these are the rules and the constraints that we can lend around. And then whatever borrowers come in, whatever borrowers come in essentially makes up our demographics. I can tell you on a whole, for the majority of our borrowers, we are generally below 80% AMI, but that is not 100% of what we do on the single family side.
And so just to clarify, are you speaking about your program, or we had the proposal for the MCC Assist program, which was where my question was?
So for the MCC program, I don't want to comment in terms on breakdowns or AMI bands or anything along those lines. That's really not my program. I just wouldn't want to speak out of turn. So.
No, I appreciate that, and I appreciate you trying to balance, these various aspects. I think that's kind of where my question lives, is with that MCC program, the Assist program that we were presented some information about last week. Like I said, I was assuming that was designed to help low income families, but whatever definition we're using, many low income families do not end up paying any tax on these properties because they are low income. And so if it's a tax credit program, then it inherently is not going to benefit low income families or households. So I think that clarification of if they're so low income that they're not paying taxes, who is the target audience?
Sure, and I think that's going to be a question for the other participants. That's really not what I'm trying to speak to today.
Sure. And it's not designated just to you. I don't know if Sheila has information on that. I understand that the representative for the Assist program isn't here either. But that's
yeah, Jaya, I wouldn't necessarily say that home buyers don't pay income tax, federal income tax. I would think that they would, and that's where this credit comes into play.
For many low income home buyers, they end up not owing income tax. So that's where my
but even though they don't owe it, they still should file and get this credit.
Okay, so you're saying that even if they don't owe, that they're still entitled to a credit. That's an important point of clarification as well.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Mary Alice.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because that was one of my questions last week. So there's like earned income credit it sounds to me like this program is very similar. So let's say that you have a tax credit of $2,000. You would get, even if you don't owe $2,000, my understanding is you would still get that $2,000. Sheila, is that correct?
That's the way I understand it, Mary Alice.
Yeah, so it kind of operates just like the earned income credit, which is very similar to that respect. So earned income credit is if you make a certain amount of money, then you get on top of that $1,500 for say. And if you never paid $1,500, you still get the $1,500. So the second question is just really a point of clarification. We're talking a lot about the income limits, the size of the loan and the house. So since this is a state program, does that mean that all of this determination in terms of how much you can buy a house for, how much money do you have to make, is that made by the state or is that made by the program?
I believe it's made by the program.
Okay.
The state gives us the authority to designate our priorities. And if we don't designate, then it reverts back to the state and they will allocate our bond cap however they wish throughout the state.
I don't know if this is too far in the weeds, but I guess one of the things that I'm thinking about is a house in Chicago costs very differently than the house in Champaign-Urbana. So if it's a statewide program, either dictated by the state or the program is a statewide program, I could see where we would have this very large increase in terms of mortgage, like a $350,000 house in Chicago is going to get you something very different than it's going to get you in Champaign-Urbana. So that's why I was just trying to understand a little bit more about the loan, the maximum amount of loan.
So, I don't want to, again, I'm not trying to speak in terms of the assist program, but trying to bridge some gaps. In terms of the authorities programs, the AMI limits that we use are by HUD. So they would be different based on cities throughout the state of Illinois. And they also vary by household size. So an income band for 80% AMI would be different if you had 8 individuals that you were filing for, and or it would be 0, or excuse me, 1 or 2. It's essentially a large grid, and that's what we operate under in terms of when we're looking at our programs.
And I believe that's the way it's done with Assist as well, that it varies depending upon the region.
Thank you. Grace, go ahead.
Thank you. Thanks for the information on this. I'm trying to understand kind of the opportunity cost of doing this. While I understand that it's not costing the city or coming directly from our funds, I'm just trying to understand what is the cost of choosing the Assist program versus something else. And so I'm just wondering if kind of what the other options are. And so what I'm hearing on a separate note about IDHA from Andrew here, which is not what we're talking about right now, is the kind of planned development for affordable housing projects that come from a private developer and then you could later fund. Is that correct on that part, Andrew?
That's one of the things that we do. And so we have 2 avenues in terms of how we use this resource. One of them on the multifamily side is kind of what we talked about there. Essentially, a developer would come with a project and you can generate these low-income housing tax credits to essentially bring in private equity to build affordable housing, right? That's the multifamily side arm of what we do. On the single family side, what we do is we issue tax-exempt bonds in order to raise capital to be able to provide loans and continue our down payment assistance programs, which of that we have a variety of them. So on the single family side, what we're doing by trying to garner as much cap as we can through, this ordinance or resolution that we have here today is to continue to allow us to get as much resource as we can so we can continue to issue tax-exempt bonds. Tax-exempt bonds allow us to continue to offer mortgage rates at a lower rate than if we didn't have tax-exempt bonds. Because if we did not, then we would have to borrow at a taxable level. And essentially that would be more expensive in terms of the cost that we would have to provide to our borrowers. But again, that's not in just the state of or the city of Urbana. That's throughout the state of Illinois.
Thank you. Because what I'm kind of wondering here is, doing this assistance program, the other thing that we're talking about, that with the MCC, yes, and just thinking about so that we have the other options. So we're talking about splitting our bond allowance between the assistance program and IHDA bonds that has the multifamily development and down payment assistance versus the other option, which is the tax credit. One point I'll just spit out too. I think if we are to continue the assistance program, I think better advertisement would be great for individuals as well as lenders. I know I shopped around for lenders in this area just a few years ago and never heard of this program. So I think better advertisement is really important if we are going to continue this. I don't know if the city can, we can help with that end. And wondering about, we've talked about a real serious need for a homeless shelter and more affordable housing projects. And it sounds like there's not control on what comes in as far as the state goes, but I also don't know if there's a way for us as a city or community to kind of advertise those kinds of developments and have them be able to take advantage of the kind of program through IDHA. Because I'm leaning towards, I would rather see more go towards that because it sounds like there's a variety of options and assistance and actual down payment assistance versus the tax credit one that we're currently talking about. So, thanks.
Yeah.
So just coming back to this, whether it's a flat rate or a percentage, I've been reached out to by a community member who provided some more information that suggested it was a percentage. So I would like clarification on that, whether it's a percentage or a flat rate. In the memo we had last week, it describes it as a percentage of the interest paid on the home loan each year. So again, clarifying, is this a, $2,000, I thought that was the cap of how much someone could receive in the tax credit, not just a flat given. So I think that clarification is important. And this isn't to harp on things too much, but rather just to clarify, if, as we are directing this funding and we're talking about who's going to be impacted, it's not that, we don't want people to be able to buy their homes, but if we're talking about someone who is just able to buy a nicer home and get a tax credit versus someone who might not be able to afford housing, those are very different things. And so clarifying what is the concrete benefit to residents in Urbana, especially as it relates to low income residents, is really important to me.
Jay, I did verify or confirm with the assist program that it is a flat $2,000 credit that is available to the home buyer for each year that they live in the home.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm. The nice thing about it, like I said, is it is a credit. It comes back to them for every year that they live there, but it also can be blended with down payment programs, which sometimes that's always not an opportunity. If you do one program, you can't necessarily take advantage of the other. And by offering it through Assist, they could also apply for IDA down payment programs or Federal Home Loan Bank programs. There's a lot of different down payment programs out there.
So the one clarification on that, and just for this group, so everyone's on the same page, is yes, what Sheila said is correct. But we do not allow the use of an MCC program with our own, with our DPA programs. The reason of that is because since the MCC is a credit and it comes from this IRS resource, or this federal resource, we can't be also issuing tax exempt bonds to fund loans and DPA, and then also use the same amount of volume cap for an individual to be getting a credit. It's kind of like double dipping from the IRS's perspective. They essentially need to be able to get the benefit of the tax exempt rate, or they need to be getting the benefit of the MCC. So just a little bit of a clarification in terms of how we view other MCC programs.
Chandra?
Has there ever been an instance where the bond request has gone to IDHA and no developer has sort of had a project where the bond was used?
So yes and no. So, I guess your question though is kind of still trying to refrain to the city of Urbana though, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, if city of Urbana in this fictitious example here, would come to us in terms of having a project, we would not be looking at allocating this specific pot of money to this program. Essentially what we're doing is we're adding, the 6 million or whatever the total amount is here today, in terms of the larger pot that essentially this city of Urbana project would be able to allocate from. A lot of times when we're talking about 4% deals, 6 million in bond cap is really not going to get a deal done. Doesn't mean it can't. I just think a lot of times what we see in terms of needs, in terms of equity for affordable housing, it's a lot larger request. I don't have the specific numbers in front of me in terms of what that average would look like. So again, what we're doing here today is we're adding it to the overall pot. So even in your example, if we didn't get the seeding from you today and the city of Urbana came to us with a transaction and it went through all of our qualified action plans, it went through our underwriting, feasibility worked out, we would still go down the path of issuing, bonds for this affordable housing project for the city of Urbana. It has nothing to do, there's no tying to your specific resource. Again, that resource is just going to a larger pot, which allows us to continue to provide affordable housing, not only in the state of Urbana, but across the state of Illinois.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that explanation. That was very helpful.
Any other questions? Grace?
Thank you. I had a few more for Sheila. And you said it needs to be decided by May. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes, thank you.
And I was wondering about the current programs, because I guess thank you for that explanation too. It's not like there are programs depending on this funding that would end right away, or kind of what's the situation on that? I'm just wondering, do we have time until May, or it's like the current agreement is over and there's going to be a gap? I'm just trying to understand the situation and the timeliness of this.
Sure. So, Sheila, if you don't mind, I can talk to it.
Sure.
So essentially what happens every year is municipalities such as yourself get a number of a dollar amount for cap, and it's based on your population times by this year it's $110. I think you guys are about 41 and some change, so you got a little over 12 million in terms of cap. Okay, so every year you guys by May 1st or these dates that are decided by state regulation guidelines, you have to identify what that use is going to be. For whatever reason, let's say you guys have no use. You're not going to give it to IDA. You're not going to give it to, the assist program or anything along those lines. It goes into this bucket. All right. And this bucket is then opens up to other municipalities like yourself that they may have a larger need for it. Now, once those individuals don't have a need for it, then it goes into this larger bucket because there's 3 buckets. There's something called home rule, which is a municipality such as yourself. Is non-home rule, which is municipality like yourself, but a lot smaller. And then there's state municipality governments, which is who I work for, the Illinois Housing Development Authority. At the very end, all the cap that is not used throughout the state of Illinois goes into this final bucket. And essentially every year we lobby for the rest of it. We don't get all of it, but we have such a need in terms of affordable housing that we essentially are trying to lobby for the remainder of whatever's left. Regardless of your decision in terms of the cap for this year by your May 1st deadlines, you will get allocated new cap the following year. So this is an annual thing every year in terms of your guys' decision with this cap and how you choose to allocate it. You guys can change course every year. Obviously from a soft sell, I would prefer you don't do that if you go, in my direction, but I'll just decide. The point is that from an opportunity cost, you guys are not locked into anything long-term, right? You're going to get new cap the following year, and the following year, and the following year, as long as this resource is available from a federal level.
Thank you. And I was wondering, maybe more towards Sheila, would it be possible as the city for us to solicit other projects, kind of like my understanding of kind of like how it was with Pinewood? Was there some kind of soliciting or recruiting? Just kind of wondering if there's a way to be proactive for some of these projects on a city end.
I don't know the history of Pinewood, Grace, because I wasn't at the city at that point, but I know that we worked closely with IDA to get that development with the Housing Authority. They were one of the funders to help with it. So I think as developers are working in this area, they're well aware of this program and they reach out to IDA or, if they had a need, they would reach out directly to us, I would guess. But I don't know that putting off this decision is going to make a difference. We can certainly put out a request for a proposal. I'll reach out to other communities and see what they have done. I did reach out to Bloomington and Normal. I know what Champaign does, and I know what Urbana does. But I'm certainly willing to do whatever you want me to do.
Yeah, and so Grace, from your point here, I think that what Sheila said is correct. I mean, a lot of times when you have municipalities and what we've seen in terms of projects that they want to get built, and I'm going to make this up. Let's say you guys have a district that is, you've been trying to target this for a certain revitalization, whatever that may be. A lot of times, what municipalities, what we've seen has done, has put out an RFP or some sort of request for information to the developer community to start looking at projects and building something. At that point, those developers, they essentially help create the package that comes to us. And then that's when we look into the review process and things like that. So again, we're more than happy to help on any front. I think that a lot of times really it's the first step is really the municipalities or the cities identifying a need and trying to figure out what that's going to look like before it gets to us in terms of the resources that we can provide as help, not only in terms of the volume cap that we're talking about today, but the other funds that we have in terms of providing affordable housing, throughout the state of Illinois. We're talking on a global scale here. And again, this is just trying to put in perspective in terms of what we can try and do over the course of, a couple years or whatever the course is of a project. So on the single family side, over the last 4 years, we've done about $3.5 billion. On the multifamily side, we've done about $1.5 billion. So we're talking a lot of volume in terms of the resources that we can put to use. Again, we don't guarantee anything, but what I'm trying to get at is these resources go into a pool that really make an impact on affordable housing throughout the state of Illinois.
Thank you. Yeah, because I would definitely see for our community, I mean, I think we very much need a homeless shelter full time that can accommodate all of the need for the community, and definitely always need more affordable housing. And I think getting people into home ownership for the first time when there might be, close but still struggling with some of those barriers, I think would be really important ones that I would love to see. So thanks for explaining that process. And it sounds like then that's regardless of how much we allocate in the bond cap here, that there's still all those possibilities either way it goes, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, we have a motion on the floor made by Grace and seconded by Mary Alice. Is there discussion? Jan?
I would say for myself personally, I feel like there's still questions about the Assist MCC program I'd like clarification on. So I would recommend sending this back to the committee of the whole. This particular one. I don't have any questions or concerns about the other one.
I second.
Was that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
And can we make a motion with the motion on the floor?
No, that's fine. We have a motion on the floor. So either, Phyllis, I need some direction here. Do they withdraw that? Can they be asked to withdraw that motion?
They should, yes.
Okay.
All right, I will ask that the motion be withdrawn then.
I will withdraw my motion.
Does the seconder concur?
I'll second.
No, that would be Mary Alice.
That would be me.
Oh,
Sure.
go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. All right.
And then I
Is
would
there
make
a
motion
motion?
to send the MCC Assist one, which I can read the full. Let me get back to it. Resolution number 2022-03-024R, resolution approving the transfer of volume cap in conjunction with private activity bond issues, single family mortgage revenue bonds and related matters, private bond cap allocation assist program series 2022 back to the committee of the whole for further discussion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. James?
Yeah, I will support this going back to committee because I was ready to approve it tonight. I think it would be a really big mistake for us to take this availability of capital away from opportunity for this community. We do need to have a spectrum of solutions to help in this area. This is one of them, and I hope by taking it back to committee, we can work through a lot of the questions some of our council members have about it.
Any other discussion?
And this is Sheila. David Rash, the representative for the Assist program, isn't able to call in on the Zoom. And so I guess I would ask that if you could just give me your questions and then I could share them with him and he could get you detailed answers. Because some of this is obviously, I don't feel like I'm giving clarity. So I think if we just took it to him directly, that might be helpful to you in the end. So if you could send me questions, I'd appreciate it.
Mary Alice?
Yeah, I agree with James. I was ready to approve this tonight. I think that we've been talking a lot about homeless shelters. We've been talking about building new affordable homes. There is definitely area that we need to be able to expand home ownership. And I think that the Assist program fills some of that gap, that we really don't have a lot of programs at the moment that the city works on that allows for that home ownership. And so that's one of the reasons why I was in support of this. So I'd really like to see this move forward as quickly as possible. So any questions that people have remaining, to get them to Sheila as soon as possible so that this can then move forward, hopefully to City Council.
Jay?
So I would echo, I certainly agree that home ownership is really important and can certainly make a generational difference, right, in terms of accumulation of wealth and resources. I just would like clarity in terms of who this is benefiting. I think that's still unclear to me. Like Grace, when I bought my home, this is not something that I heard about. I'm really curious about how this is being advertised, who it is being advertised to. And who it's benefiting, right? So it's not to say it's not valuable, but if we're talking about someone buying a $300,000 home, they don't need a tax credit. I would like to
if you look at the list of the mortgages for this area, none of them were that high.
I understand, but that's the cap, right? So I'd like clarification on some of those pieces, and I will be sure to get those questions to you to pass along since we didn't have a representative here. I was holding those questions, right, to hopefully get them answered tonight. And since that didn't happen, I will get those to you as quickly as possible.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to vote? I think we are. Will the clerk please call the roll?
We're voting for sending back to committee of the whole too, just to clarify, right?
Yes, that's the motion on the floor.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey, Ms. Hersey,
No.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Bishop,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. And again, the request is for people to send their questions into Sheila so they can be prepared for the committee next week. Okay, last item under the Grace.
Oops, sorry, that's me. Next, I move for approval resolution number 2022-03-025R, resolution approving the transfer volume cap in connection with private activity bonds, single family mortgage revenue related matters, private bond cap allocation, IDHA series 2022.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Moved by Grace, seconded by Mary Alice. Discussion. Grace.
Thank you. I think we've discussed this one pretty well in the last one. Just wanted to say thank you to Andrew for coming and answering questions and for that important work, working for affordable housing with the state project and sharing more about it. It's really great to learn more about the program. So thank you.
You are very welcome.
Any other comments? Chandra?
I wondered, since the initial recommendation was a 50-50 split, does sending the previous one back to Cal, are we still approving the resolution for 50-50? And could that possibly change given the outcome of what may happen with the other resolution?
Well, at this point, it is a 50-50 split. So if you wanted to change that at this point, you probably could.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right, Sheila?
Yes, that's correct.
Well, I mean, I would recommend or motion that the split be 60-40 instead of 50-50 with 60 going to IDHA. I don't know if that's if we can do that now with the other thing on the floor.
Okay.
I would like to see more going to IDHA.
Okay. Mary Alice.
So I'm wondering if, and Sheila, so let's say during the committee of the whole next week, when we talk about the ASSIST program, if the council decides that we should have a lower amount go to the ASSIST program and give a higher amount to this one, can there be a new resolution so that we can go ahead and move forward with the 50% now? And then based on the conversation at the committee of the whole, we can then have a secondary, basically an addendum to this one, if that decision, the split changes. Is that possible, Sheila?
I guess, sure. I'm not quite sure how to do that procedurally, but I could work with the clerk's office and the mayor on how to do that.
Just because I think part of what I'm struggling with right now, at least my sense of the council, is that people are in support of this motion, rather that is a 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever that split is. I think that it seems to me like council is in support of at least 50%. So if that's the case, we should, in my opinion, we should go ahead and approve this right now. Then if we change our mind about the other one, then we can have an additional one for this one, if that makes sense.
Like I said, I would have to work with the mayor's office and the clerk's office on procedurally how to do that. But sure, I would think it was possible.
If you worded it, it's a minimum of 50%. Would that work?
Sure. I can change the resolution to say that if the vote says that.
So in that case, we would need an amendment to the motion, right? To change the phrase in this resolution to be a minimum of
50% for the IDA allocation.
Correct.
Would someone like to amend the motion? Grace.
I think Sharice had her hand up first too. Her hand was hiding in the leaves there.
Sharice, go ahead.
I kind of have a question for Andrew. I'm not well versed in banking and so on and so forth. At this moment in time, regarding the tax credits and stuff, do homeowners get a tax credit for the interest on their mortgage like they used to?
Yeah, well, so this is outside of the realm. Now we're talking personal here, right? So outside of the realm of, the financing that we're talking about, the down payment assistance programs and things like that. But technically, when you file your taxes, yes, you can do that. There's two ways to do it. You can take standard deductions, right? Or you can do itemized. And if you were to do itemized, you could include your interest on your mortgage. Realistically, the way that the tax code has changed since 2016 or so, itemized deductions are generally not as beneficial unless you have a really high interest payment on your, this is the big SALT tax, right? State and local taxes deductions. So you're better off going with the flat deductions, generally speaking. But it depends on each homeowner and their situation, how they file their withholdings, and things of that nature.
So either of these programs really would actually be beneficial to the first-time home buyer regarding what they could possibly recoup during tax season.
Yeah, technically yes, but again, they're also a little different, right? The MCC is a credit, whereas you're talking about a deduction for the other. So there are different tax implications when you're kind of looking at this as a whole.
Okay, but it could be a benefit still.
It could be, that is correct. You do have the option.
In addition to being able to claim that flat tax, they can also get credit or something else regarding these programs.
There is an option when you're filing your taxes to include interest on your mortgage if you wish. It may not always be the best way to do it in terms of filing your taxes. Again, it depends on your tax income bracket and what you're filing. But yes, that is an option that you have with home ownership. Again, I can't advocate if that would be the way you should file your taxes.
Right.
It is an option that you could have. That's right.
I understand that. So, depending on what one's mortgage is, and if they qualify for one of these two programs, they could end up on the plus side when they file their income taxes. Meaning they get a refund, or they get something back on some level, or at least they don't have to pay regarding it.
Again, yes, that is a possibility, but there's a lot of factors that go into filing your taxes outside of just this item.
Right. I just wanted to understand that, as opposed to them not having any of this. So.
Correct. I mean, in theory, same concept. If you're a renter, you don't have the option of including interest on your mortgage because it doesn't exist. You don't have an MCC because you don't get a credit on your home. It doesn't exist. But again, trying to put on my tax caveat hat here, in terms of, it just depends in terms of how you're filing from an individual status, married couple, everything that you would kind of work through in terms of tax season. So.
Okay, thank you.
I think we can accomplish what I'm hearing the council say they want to do by on page 1 of the resolution, last paragraph. It could read, pursuant to section 6 and 6.1 of the Illinois Private Activity Bond Allocation Act, the city hereby transfers and reallocates a minimum $2,294,820 of its volume cap for calendar year 2022. That would give you the option of increasing that after the discussion next week. Would that work for you? Grace as the motion maker.
I think before changing the motion, I had some questions and thoughts on that as well. I don't feel as comfortable with the minimum amount, or at least 50%. I would just rather it be specific, especially since there is another contributor. It doesn't seem to make sense to say like at least 50% and then commit possibly 50% to another organization, and it's just not really clear. I would be more in favor of just sending them both back to committee if that is kind of the question. If one depends on the other, we have until May. Weeks doesn't have a negative impact on it. It seems like it might be easier than changing or passing a whole other resolution to just take another few weeks and have a final answer on both of them. So those are my thoughts before changing a motion.
Well, we have a motion on the floor for approval. Do you want to vote on the motion, or are you going to withdraw it?
I was just wondering if there was any more input from council members.
Jaya.
I personally am comfortable with the at minimum language, just because I think this is a program that I at least would like to support. Pushing at least half of that bond allocation to, and then, we can always increase it if we decide that's the right thing to do. It might well be that next week in the committee of the whole, we'll decide we're going to keep things exactly as they are, and then a further resolution wouldn't be needed. But I think that this creates that flexibility personally.
Any other thoughts? Mary Alice?
Yeah, I agree with Jaya. I think that I would like to see us move forward today on this one, and to accommodate potential future conversations using at minimum is completely acceptable to me.
Further thoughts? Then we'll need a motion to amend the motion to include the language reallocates a minimum $2,294,820.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Chandra, seconded by James. Could the clerk please call the roll? And this is on the amendment to the motion.
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
No.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
Okay, that amendment passes. And now we'll vote on the original motion as amended. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Bishop?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to reports of special committees. Don't believe there is one tonight. Reports of officers. Do any of the city officers have a report?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Okay. I do have a couple of things. One, I wanted to let people know that city staff met with staff from the city of Champaign, and we discussed potential areas of collaboration on the community blueprint for reducing violence and related to the use of ARPA funds. So we'll continue those discussions and be bringing more information to the council. Also wanted to let you know that we made the announcement today that Pride Fest 2022 will once again be in the city of Urbana, and that'll be October 1st, 2022. And then this coming Thursday is the return of the world's shortest St. Patrick's Day Parade in downtown Urbana. That will take place between 5 and 7 p.m. The parade starts at 6:30. It ends at 6:35. And it lives up to its name. So if you're going to be in town, you're all welcome to attend. And then we are making plans right now for return to in-person meetings for the City Council, Committee of the Whole, and all boards and commissions for April 4th. And we'll be sending out more information about that next week so folks can prepare. New business, there is none. And we'll move on to discussion item.
Diane, I think Chandra had her hand up.
Sorry.
I just had a quick question. Earlier they were talking about the R7 zoning and that sort of meeting things. I mean, granted, it's in the WUNA and not necessarily my ward, but I was curious, would we be getting information about that, and if like that meeting would be posted online for the whole everyone to know about, or and get more information on?
Yeah,
I thought maybe that would be a report for Carol will talk about it or something.
There are materials posted online from the Plan Commission that have been prepared for those meetings in the past. So we can send links to the memos prepared by staff and the background information and maps and that sort of thing. The neighborhood meeting, I assume, that's going to be a Zoom, I believe. That's recorded, and that should be available as well. And then there's another meeting coming up at the Plan Commission on March 24th, I believe. Is that correct? I'd have to double check the dates, but we can provide links to a substantial amount of information on this topic.
Yeah, a little background. As we were getting all the emails, I hadn't heard much else about it. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, we have one discussion item, and that is Sheila, and it's rental assistance for individuals impacted by gun violence.
Thank you. Over the past 6 or 8 months, there have been a group of community leaders, social service agencies, people who provide rent assistance, the cities, both cities and the United Way, meeting to talk about the needs of families who are impacted by gun violence. And so one of the needs that has been identified is the ability to provide rent assistance for those families. Excuse me. Champaign County Regional Planning Commission has developed a program. As you know, they have a lot of experience in the TBRA programs, and they're requesting funding to administer a rent assistance program for families impacted by gun violence. The program would provide rental assistance vouchers through the home program and administrative funding through the CDBG program to implement the program. So they are wanting to launch the program in May, and this funding will help with that initiative. They're requesting $85,000 in CDBG funding and $110,000 in home funding for the vouchers. Because of the urgency of the program and the limited number of agencies with the capacity to implement a TBRA program, staff is requesting to move forward with grant agreements without issuing an RFP. Currently, Courage Connection and Champaign County RPC are the agencies implementing a program.
So this isn't a vote tonight. This is seeking your opinion on whether or not we should move ahead with this as presented. And then we'd come back with, would there be an agreement? There'd be an agreement. Is that
Yeah,
correct,
there'll be two agreements. Mhm.
Yeah. So, discussion. Grace.
Thank you. Sheila, did you say that this would be grants for RPC and Courage Connection? Is that right?
No, currently those are the two agencies in town that are running a TBRA program with our funding. So, and they're the ones with the capacity and the experience. So this would be funding for Champaign County Regional Plan Commission to set a separate fund or program aside with priority for those impacted by gun violence. So each program, like Courage Connection's priority is families impacted by domestic violence. Champaign County Regional Plans Commission's existing program for TBRA is a self-sufficiency program. So there's key things that families have to do in order to improve, like maybe they're going to school or maybe they're doing some job training, and then they get some intensive counseling over that year. And so those programs are different than this one, although they're the same type of funding source.
And I imagine there'd be more details to come on how much distance and details and all that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Details would come with the agreements and the memos. Mary Alice?
So Sheila, just to put a clarification, so these are CDBG funds and home funds, and sometimes I get mixed up a little bit in terms of the lead agency. So I know that Urbana is the lead agency for some of these funds, which then are distributed throughout the entire county. Are these going to be dollars for the county, or are they going to be dollars for the city of Urbana?
They are dollars for the county. Therefore, the priority will be for people impacted by gun violence.
Okay, so this would be available to anybody in Champaign County, and then the idea is that RPC would run that program.
Correct.
Does it have to go through the community development group?
Our CD commission?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to. We will bring it to them if we get a head nod from you this evening that you're in favor of us kind of moving forward. We have a meeting next week that we'll bring it up with them and discuss it. And then the CAL meeting, the first one in April, we will bring the agreements to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chandra?
So you mentioned these are home funds. Are they home ARP funds or just solely home funds?
They are only home funds. Home ARP, we have just started the implementation process for creating an allocation plan. So it's very, very early, but we have a large pot of home funding, and TBRA is one of the eligible uses. So it'll be totally separate from the ARP program.
Okay. Well, I'm definitely, this sounds like a great opportunity for the community. So I would be in favor of hearing more details and seeing this sort of program come to fruition.
Okay. Mary Alice?
No, I'm sorry. I was trying to lower my hand, and sorry about that.
Can I say, I think I'd just like a straw, unless, James?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would like to see staff proceed and bring us more information on a program like this.
Okay, I'm saying 3 head nods. Are there? I see 4, 5. Okay. I think we got it. So we have direction to staff to bring information and the agreement back to council. Grace.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely support, pursuing this. It would be helpful for me to just knowing what other things that the home and CDBG funds usually fund or have been funding. I know that we've had some projects come up kind of one at a time, but I think that would be helpful for me of kind of like the big picture on home and CDBG and how much it is that's going where, just kind of like an overview would be helpful for me.
Sure. And excuse me, next week we're going to be bringing our draft annual action plan It's very early in the process, but the 30-day comment period is opening up tomorrow. So we'll be next Monday night having a staff report on that. But kind of just a quick rule of thumb, Grace, home funding has to produce a housing unit. So whether that's rent assistance or whether it's building a new home like Habitat or whether it's rehabbing homes like First Followers, at the end of the day, it has to produce a housing unit, and CDBG has to help low to moderate income citizens. So it's infrastructure, social service program, that type of thing. So it's just in a nutshell, that's a quick way to think of it.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we have direction. James.
Oh, James.
No, I have a quick procedural question before we're done, if I can get it in. If we're done with the current discussion.
I believe we're done with the current discussion unless anyone else has a comment. Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am going to be traveling for work for the next 2 Mondays. And while I expect to have connectivity, I'm a little bit concerned that I am supposed to be chair and that might create a problem. Is there a precedent for trading chair roles?
Yes, that can be accommodated.
Just in case, I'd prefer to do it just in case, and then take a responsibility in April for someone taking these next 2.
Sure. So the next person up would be Mary Alice.
Yeah, and I'm actually traveling on Monday, and in case there is a plane delay, I think maybe Chris should swap.
Okay, you're up, Chris. So next week's Committee of the Whole will be chaired by Chris Evans, and then we'll go back to James after that. Okay, great.
Very good.
All right. I think that takes care of business for tonight. So with no further business before this council, we are adjourned. Thank you. Good night.